Okay, so we basically finished the learning this week about the Torah reading. The Torah reading, we left out a big part in the end about how Yaakov works for the sheep of Lavan for 6 years. 6 years he cheats him. So Lavan cheats Yaakov into working for him 20 years. And really, he only wanted to work for 7 years. 7 years, he agreed to work for 7 years for Rachel, but he tricked him. Instead of Rachel, he after working 7 years, so instead he gave him Leah. He got married to Leah. And then he said, but I wanted Rachel. So he said, okay, I'll give Rachel, work for another 7 years. So he worked for another 7 years. He gave Rachel, and then afterwards he worked for 7 years. And then he said, now what about the sheep and things like that? So he said, good, work for the sheep. So let's make conditions. You only get the speckled sheep. So he said, okay. So sure enough, all the sheep that were born were speckled. And Yaakov said, too bad, worked so hard. You didn't get one striped sheep. He said, yeah, but I got the speckled ones. Speckled, who talked about speckled sheep? I said, striped sheep. All the sheep that have stripes on them, they're yours. The speckled ones, who was talking about speckled ones? Said, the striped ones are mine. Yeah. So sure enough, all the sheep after that were born striped. And Lavan came along and said, wow, that's really bum luck, You were supposed to be all the brown ones. You don't get, all you got was striped, and you get one brown one. So who's talking about brown sheep? So brown, that's what we talked about, was brown sheep. We talked about brown sheep, but no stripe. What is stripe? I don't understand you, Yaakov. I thought you were an intelligent person. What's this speckled and striped? I said brown sheep. That's okay, so it'll be brown sheep. So after that, all the sheep were born that were brown. So he said, well, that's really good luck. Look at this again. Brown sheep. So that's really good luck. What type of good luck is that? I never said brown sheep. What some sort of a thief? I never said brown sheep. When I meant the sheep that had like round circles, every time he changed it, 100 times he changed the conditions. And finally it ended up, and whatever he said, that's what Yaakov got. And no matter how hard he made it, in the end up, Yaakov became tremendously rich. And he leaves with his wife and children, and Lavan goes and runs after him. He wants it with all of his men. And God speaks to Lavan and says, don't try to do anything bad to Yaakov. And that's basically the end of this week's Torah portion. And now Yaakov is going, and next week's Torah portion, he's traveling with his wives and his children and his flocks. And with the flocks, he also bought oxes and donkeys and servants and maid servants. And he's traveling along. Next week is going to meet Esav. That's what we're going to talk about next week. But now let's learn the Haftorah. Haftorah is a bit weird. Haftorah is strange. The Haftorah is a portion, usually from the prophets, but not always. Sometimes it's from Chronicles. Sometimes this, and it's read after the regular Torah portion. This week is by the prophet Hoshea. Now Hoshea was a strange prophet in a strange time. Some people say that Hoshea was the greatest of all the prophets, except for Moses, that he was as great as Isaiah the prophet and everything. And he prophesied for a really long time. He prophesied for about 90 years, Hoshea. And nobody listened to him because he was prophesying to the worst crowd you could possibly have as far as prophecy goes. And that was to the people of Israel. After, and we've talked about this many times, but after King Solomon died, so he had a son called Rehoboam. And Rehoboam was not a good king. And the people did not like him. And he was not very, very friendly to the people either. So the people wanted to make a revolution, and God chose a new king. God said, Yerovam ben Nevat, he'll be the new king, and he'll be the king over 10 tribes. That's called Yisrael. And there'll be the other 2 tribes that they'll stay with Rechavam, that's Judah, Yehuda, and Benjamin. That's 2 tribes, and that'll be called Yehuda. That'll be called the nation of Yehuda. And the upper part, the upper 10 tribes will be called Yisrael. And immediately, this Yerovam ben Nevat, who was an amazingly talented, great person, he was chosen by God, by a prophet, to be the king. Something went wrong in his head, and he decided to be normal. He decided to be a politician. So he didn't want people to go down to the Holy Temple, because that's where the other 2 tribes were, in the area of the Holy Temple. So he built golden calves. He made 2 big golden calves, one in Dan and one in Beit El. And he also put guards on the border so the people wouldn't go down. And he ruled over there, I don't know how long, 20 years or something. And people worshipped idols. And that's the way it was for the whole duration of this short-lived country called Yisrael. And it was for about 250 years that way, something like that. About 250 years, no one went down to the Holy Temple. No one in the northern part. Holy Temple was their first temple. 10 tribes didn't go down to the Holy Temple. What did they do? They had a drive-in Holy Temple, drive-in. Why go to the Holy Temple? Do your Holy Temple business at home. Golden calves. Everybody worshiped the golden calves. And people, as soon as they worshiped the golden calves, so then everything, then all hell broke loose. And people were worshiping everything that they could and doing all sorts of debauched things and crazy things. And, finding excuses for it. So God sent all these prophets. Nobody listened to them. The most notable of these prophets that nobody listened to was Hoshea. Hoshea. And despite that, if you read Hoshea, you'll see that Hoshea says in the end that, the Jewish people are terrible, they're awful, but God is never going to leave you, no matter what. For sure, they will never leave the kingship of the Jewish people from Judah, and all the Jews are going to come back to Israel, and etc., etc. Okay, here's this week's Torah portion. Ready? The words are a little bit hard, so Ami Tuluim Lemeshuvati. My people are, this comes after, this is like the 12th, what is it, the 11th chapter. The 11th chapter of Hoshea. How many chapters are there in Hoshea? Not that many. The 14. Oh, there are 14 chapters of Hoshea. And that's why it's called one of the 12 later prophets. They're all grouped in together because he didn't have that much of a prophecy. 12. I mean, he got a lot more prophecy than I do, that's for sure. I don't get any, but at least he got 12. So the prophets were holy people. They were holy people. And we really don't have much of a concept of what that means, prophecy, but prophecy is still today. We see that the pupils of the Baal Shem Tov had prophecy. The Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, for sure had prophecy. We saw that he told things that was going to be. Okay. So it says, before this is already the 11th chapter. So it says, God took you out of Egypt. He did all sorts of good things for you. He protected you. And nevertheless, you are uncertain. Amit tuloyim, you are uncertain. Le shuvati, to return to me. Le meshuvati, to return to me. El al, to above. Yikra'u, you might call out to God altogether, but yachad lo yeromam. Not one of you are together. And as all of you all together, there is no one to, let's see, where's this? Yeah, but all of you together, you are not praising God, romem. You don't praise God. In other words, God to you is like a big sort of a burden. You're not a, see, how do I turn pages over here? One second, I did something wrong over here. There we go. Yes, okay. Ech etencha Ephraim amagencha Yisrael. Now Ephraim was this Yerovam ben Nevat. he was from the tribe of Ephraim. And Ephraim, there were the two sons of Joseph. From the tribe of Ephraim, he was from there. And the whole country was called, that whole northern part was called Yisrael. So it says, how can I give you over, Ephraim? V'magencha Yisrael. And how can I, give you over to the enemy, deliver you, Yisrael. How can I make you like Adma, Adma and Tzavoim? There were two countries or cities, whatever, nations that God destroyed totally. Nafach alai libi yachad, my heart is turning over. Nichmru nechumi, my is burning inside of me. My, how do you say, my mercies. Mercies. Yachad nichmru nechumai. I have my mercies have all been kindled together, right? In other words, I'm still merciful to you, despite all the terrible things you've done. You're still my children. What can I do? How can I activate my blazing anger and go and destroy you? I go destroy. Why? Because I am God, v'lo ish, and I'm not a man. B'kirbecha kodesh, inside of you is holy. Holy. I am in your midst, v'lo avo ba'ir, and I will not come into another city. In other words, no matter what Jerusalem does and I destroy it, I'll never pick another city to go into. You're going to be the Jewish people. Acharei Hashem yelchu, after God, you will follow like a lion will roar. Yishag kihu yishag b'yachardu banim miyom, and all of the children will be afraid. All the children were like tremble from the west. Now let's see what this is talking about. Let's have a look and see what it's talking about. I have all these explanations over here. Here we have the Radak, Rab David Kimchi. Says what's going to be. It says the whole world, you for certainly will all return to the place of the Holy Temple. You will certainly return there. And then you will be called sons of God. Just like it was when you left Egypt. You said, Bani matem l'Hashem Elokechem. Said that you are sons of God. God commanded the Jewish people commandments. He told them, don't do whatever is make tear your flesh or something for that person, because you're the sons of God. Now this, by the way, Hoshea was very strange. God told him, take a prostitute, go into the street of the prostitutes, get a prostitute over there and get married to her. And we got married and had some children. And God said, okay, now send her away. He said, I can't, it's my wife. So the God said, listen, it's just the same thing with the Jewish people. The Jewish people, they're my wife. At Mount Sinai, we got married. No matter what she does, how unfaithful she is, I can't send her away. Yechardu katzipor miMitzrayim, said all of the Jews will shake like a bird from Egypt, and v'kona kayona, and like a dove from the lands of Ashur. Sometimes they say Mitzrayim, that's referring to the narrow land of narrowness. That's Russia. The Jews in Russia were denied any Jewish education, and Ashur is like America and England and those places where it's just so rich and abundant that people don't want to limit themselves in any way to do what God says. So it says, I'll make it like a lion roars. All of a sudden, all the Jews will wake up. They'll come from Egypt. They'll come from Ashur, and I'll bring them back to their houses. So says God, I'll settle them in their homes. So says God. says here he says the Radak, not just Egypt. It means all the countries in the world. The Jews will come from all over. For sure, they'll return to the land of Israel and serve me. What happened? Oh, this is the end of the page. Oh, yeah. Oh, so now we got to go to a new para, new chapter. Here we go. Chapter 12. No. There we go. Oh. Yeah. Aleph. Yes. Savavuni kachachash Ephraim. Ephraim, like I say, is a name for the upper 10 tribes. It's called Ephraim. And because Yerovam ben Nevat came from Ephraim. The bottom 2 tribes were Yehuda. And Yehuda there'll always be a leader from Yehuda. Mashiach will come from Yehuda. Says they have surrounded me with their perfidy, with their lies, Ephraim, and with trickery, the house of Yisrael. Right? This is the kingdom of Israel. But not only Israel, but also Yehuda, also the bottom tribe also. The Jewish people, in the end, the temple was destroyed because the Jews just couldn't get it together. So it says, Yehuda owed Rod and Kale, but Yehuda, nevertheless, they still accepted the rulership together with God. And they were faithful to the Holy One, So the main sinners over here were the 10 tribes in the north, and God actually, he sent down a king and took them into exile, I think Shalmaneser or something. He took them down, and that's the 10 tribes. That's the lost 10 tribes. Nobody knows where they are to this very day. There's books that are written. They say the Ethiopians are the lost 10 tribes. They say that there's people from India claim, people from Japan that claim. There was a book that said that all the people in England are from the 10 last tribes. Why? Because the king, to this very day, the royal family, the males in the royal family, get circumcised at the age of 8. So they thought that's the reason. There's also all these other signs also of the American Indians, not what to talk about. But none of this has ever been substantiated in any way. It's all theories. And not only that, you have to remember, when did all this business happen, right? When did this happen? It happened like 3,000 years ago? Is it? No, a little less than 3 years. It is, let's say, 400, like 2,600 years ago. This whole business happened. 2,600 years. So that's a long time. 2,600 years. And nevertheless, it says, but Yehuda, the 2 tribes of Yehuda have remained faithful to me. Ephraim. Ro'eh, they like embrace. They're shepherding with empty wind. With the wind, Rodef, Kodim, they run after the east wind, and we'll see what this means. All day just lies and plunder. They're increasing. And they made a covenant with this country called Ashur. Assyria. A covenant with Assyria, and they transport oil to Egypt. Let's see what this means here. Ephraim is not going after God. This is the Ibn Ezra. Not going after God. Ki'im, they'll go after their own way. That's what it means, that they're running after emptiness, and they're making covenants with all the non-Jews, all the non-Jew nations. They figure that that's what's going to save them. Riv Hashem im Yehuda, but God also has his arguments, is not pleased with what Yehuda does. Ulifkod al Yaakov kedarachov kama'alav yeshivlo. And God is going to visit on Jacob, in other words, all the rest of the Jews, according to their evil deeds. And that's what it finally happened, that God destroyed the temple. Now we're going to Yaakov. Yaakov, of course, it's a metaphor for the Jewish people, and Yaakov, on the other, it is the Jewish people. But let's talk about Yaakov himself. This week's Torah portion is Yaakov. In the womb, he grabbed on to the heel of his brother, and with his full power, he actually fought against angels. Angels of God. We'll see this next week. We'll see how he fights with the angel. And he defeated an angel and struggled with an angel, and the angel, VaYitchanan, and the angel cried and begged him, and in Beit El, he will find us, and there he will speak to us. What's Beit El? Beit El is the Holy Temple. Let's see. Rashi. Yosef Karo. Here's Yosef Karo. I wonder what the Shulchan Aruch, yeah. Said Beit El, some say Beit El, says God will bless us over there. The angels that Yaakov fought with, he said that your name, what do you mean he'll bless you? It says that the name Yaakov won't be anymore, but God will add on a name, Yisrael will be called. So if so, the Jewish people, they have it in their power to defeat the bad. They have the power to defeat. Hashem is the God of all hosts. God is in his remembrance. In other words, Yaakov, the Jewish people in Yehuda, the lower part where the Holy Temple was, they still have some connection with God. They're still remembering God. And you will return by your God, and you will observe justice and hope for God constantly. Hope for God constantly. Now, there's the Jewish people. So it says, Canaan, instead, but now what are you doing now? You are like a businessman with Mosne Mirma, with crooked scales. And you love to cheat. You love to cheat people. Ephraim said, I have become very rich. I've found success. It's coming to me. It's coming to me. I've held this power to myself. And because you won't find any bad thing that I've done. Look around, you won't find any sins that I've done. And those, they really, truly believe in themselves that they're okay. It says, I am God. I am God, your God, since I took you out of Egypt, and I will return back into your tents, in other words, into the holy temple, like in the days of early times. Right. Just as I provided for all of your needs when I took you out of Egypt, as I'll give you everything also now. What are you uptight? Why do you have to steal? Why do you have to lie? Don't worry, I can provide. He said, when I took you out of Egypt, this is the Rashi. So just like when I took you out of Egypt, I was able, and I killed the Egyptians. I was able to discern who was a firstborn and who was not a firstborn. So also I know who is crooked, which of you Jews are lying and doing crooked things, which you are not. Don't worry, I know what's going on. And I'll put you back into tents. And this is what it means. I'll return to protect you, etc. Just sit and learn my Torah. That's what sitting in tents means, to learn the Torah. I have given you speeches from the prophets, and I have increased your prophecy. And in the hands of the prophets, I gave you all sorts of allegories and lessons. I spoke to the prophet. Yes, I spoke to the prophets. And God says, I'm still with you. You see, if I'm talking to, even if I'm warning with you, warning you, you see that that's a sign that I'm still with you. It says Gilad was another country. If they were destroyed, it was because of vanity. And but Gilgal was the first place where the Holy Temple was when they came, the tabernacle. When the Jews came into Israel, they crossed over the Jordan. It was 440 years until they built the temple, until King David built the temple, Solomon built the temple. So although 440 years, they did have a temple, but it was called the Mishkan. And most of the time it was in this place called Shiloh. There it was like for 369 years. But when they came in 14 years, it was in a place called Gilgal. So you sacrifice over there your oxes and your different things, but one second, excuse me. Yes, 1 minute, one moment, please. Yes, okay, good. So therefore, they did sacrifices, but it was all in vain. It was like heaps and furrows on the field. They didn't really intend what they were doing with their sacrifices. Yaakov ran away. Yaakov fled to the field of Aram. And Yisrael, his name was changed to Yisrael. Now, who is Aram? Why don't you learn from Yaakov, that he listened to what God said. He ran to Lavan Arami. That's just Aram. He went to Aram. He went to where God said, and you should learn from him. He went to the field and he worked for a wife, and for the sake of a wife, he guarded sheep. In other words, he was willing to do very simple things, whatever. Listen to what God says, and it'll come out all right. Through a prophet, which was Moses, God took the Jews from Egypt, and with a prophet, they will safeguard you. You will be protected. Yes, with a prophet, you will be protected. What does this mean? Let's look and see. Right, with a prophet, you were protected, the Jewish people in the desert. God protected you with a prophet. Who was that? That was Moses. So you Jewish people, you can be sure that you'll be protected now. I still love you, even though you're going against me. And no matter what I do is only going to be from love. In the end, God says, I will redeem you and bring you all back, just like Moses did. As we'll talk about more tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday, and God willing, we'll finish in the morning. We'll finish the Devar Malchut. But this is now you'll have an overview of at least what they say in the synagogue when they read from the Haftorah, from the prophets. Have a good day with Mashiach now.